Hey, Tribe Sally here. Hope you're having an amazing and fascinating day. I know I am. Thank you so much for being here. We've got kind of a special video today that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. I get a lot of questions about how I find free and safe places to park for the night. And today I'm answering one from John, who's getting ready for RV retirement. And his questions are perfect for anyone that's new to boondocking. We're going to talk about when to start your search, how I choose safe places, and a few tools that make the process easy, including how I use ChatGPT to plan my travel days. But of course, before we get to that, thank you so much for being here. I hope you get something useful out of this. If you do, please consider subscribing, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Really want to hear what your thoughts on my thoughts about how to do this are, and what you would do differently or what you do the same. Any of those things would be really cool. If you want to join the community, you can join as a channel member on YouTube. There's always a link right below the video to be able to do that. If you want something that's not a long-term commitment, but you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, and then there's a link in the video description below. That's a one-time thing. It's literally like buying me a cup of coffee. If you want to send us a postcard or send some treats for Kit, you can do any of those things. Mailing address is also in the video description down below. And we're going to get right into this as soon as we run the intro.
Wake up with the sun in our eyes. Sally forth, no need for goodbyes. Journey calls, let's roll the dice. Every mile a new surprise.
Well, welcome back. Really glad to have you here for this one. As you can see, my 50 states map is over my shoulder, and all 50 states are now filled in, so I feel like I have a kind of an idea about what I'm talking about here. But let's talk about what boondocking really means before we jump into all of the tips and tricks and stuff. You'll hear people use boondocking and dry camping like they mean exactly the same thing, and while they're really close cousins, they're not identical. The word boondocking actually comes from the Tagalog word bundok, B-U-N-D-O-K, which means mountain. American soldiers brought it home from the Philippines over a century ago, and the boondocks came to mean the middle of nowhere. So when we say we're boondocking, we're literally camping out in the boondocks, away from hookups, campgrounds, or crowds. True boondocking usually means you're self-sufficient and on public land, places like BLM or Forest Service roads. By contrast, dry camping simply means camping without hookups, whether that's in a state park overflow lot, at a harvest host location, a fairground, or you might be parked near a town or even within an unorganized campground, within an organized campground, used to be able to talk, just without utilities. So in short, dry camping is no hookups, but boondocking is no hookups and off the beaten path. All boondocking is dry camping, but not all dry camping is boondocking. And if you're new to boondocking, one of my favorite ways to dip your toes in is to dry camp somewhere that has hookups. Just don't plug in. That way, if something goes sideways, if your batteries run too low, your water runs out, or you just want a long hot shower, your safety net's right there. It's a great way to learn your rig's limits, and yours, and to practice conserving power and water without the stress of being miles from civilization. Truthfully, I recommend doing that anytime you get a new rig. Go someplace that's pretty close to where you're located. So if you still have a house, for example, when I still had a house, every time I bought a new RV, I would go to a local city park, actually, that had hookups available, and I would hook up and test everything. And then I would unhook and test everything as well, just to make sure that everything is working the way that it should. So that's always a great idea whenever you're getting a new rig, or a new to you rig, especially. So before I get into the specifics, I've got a few quick notes. First of all, this is just how I do it. You're going to find your own rhythm as you gain experience in boondocking. So, and if you're an experienced boondocker as well, please, leave a comment down below. What do you do that's the same as what I do? What do you do that's different? Why you do it the way you do? Because that can be really helpful for somebody that's thinking through this for the first time. So, always make sure you're parked somewhere legal. Rules vary a lot by state, by city. even by store if you're going to be tardocking, as I like to call it, Walmart, Cracker Barrel, Home Depot, any of those kinds of places. Make sure you know the rules and make sure you follow them. Don't be a scofflaw. Don't be that person that doesn't, and a scofflaw, if you don't know, that's somebody that scoffs at the law. They don't think it applies to them. Well, it does. And it applies to you because your behavior applies to me as a full-time boondocker. So what you do affects what I'm able to do in the future, and vice versa. So do the right thing, always. Next up, leave no trace. I don't care if you're out on public land or if you're in a Walmart parking lot. Be respectful of the land and the community that allows you to stay there. And finally, you need to know the difference between parking and camping. If your slides are out, your chairs are set up, and you got the grill going, that's camping. It's not overnight parking. I once watched somebody set up a full patio outside of Walmart. They had their rug, their grill, their lawn chairs, and that's not what we want to be doing. As it turns out, they did get a knock, and they got sent away. I mean, there were a lot of people in that particular Walmart parking lot. Those people weren't there for the rest of the night. So, yeah, you don't want to have that happen to you. Make sure you know the difference between parking and camping. Camping is more fun, but sometimes you just have to park. All right, so let's talk about some rules of thumb for finding a spot. And the first thing I do, this is how I do it. I usually set a target destination. So let me back up a second and tell you, I've got two different kinds of travel, right? I have exploratory travel, where, like, I spent the summer with Barb and we had a whole long list of things we wanted to see and do. And so basically the way we handle it is we will travel 2 or 3 or 4 days in a row, and then we find a place to stop for 2 to 4 or 5 or sometimes a little bit. I think we stayed one place, I think we stayed a week, so that we can rest up and then do it again. And that's, you know, when you're going in a general direction, but you're traveling multiple days to get there. Or you might just have a travel day or an errand day that means you need a place to stay for one night before you get to your destination for some period of time. So on the night before a travel day, I usually set a target destination that night, or I'll do it first thing in the morning before I get on the road. But I want to have a pretty good idea of where I'm going to be staying the next evening before I ever start driving. That's me. And then, of course, one of my next rules for me is have at least one backup. Or, as my friend Deborah Dickinson says, have a backup plan for your backup plan, which is truly not a bad idea. I had a circumstance a few years ago when I was still fairly new to boondocking, where I had gone to iOverlander, which is one of my preferred apps for being able to find places to boondock, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I'd gone to iOverlander. I had found 2 places on iOverlander. The first one that I went to had a review that was less than a week old, and so a recent review tells me, all right, so somebody has done this relatively recently. And both locations were about a half an hour in opposite directions each of the little town that they were located near. So I went to the first one because it really looked the best. And I got there and there was a sign posted that said very clearly, and it was not a new sign, it was not put up in the past week, that said very clearly, you can do this, you can train your hunting dog, you can practice archery, you can do all kinds of things, but you can't park overnight, you can't camp. And there were a couple other things you couldn't do. But it was very, very clear. And so this person had put a review for what an awesome boondocking site this was. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't legal, and I wasn't going to stay there. Now, realistically, I probably could have stayed there, and chances are that I was far enough out in the boonies that nobody would have even noticed. But remember that part I said about don't be a scofflaw? Don't. Just don't. So I left, and I went back to the little town that I had come out of, and then half an hour in the other direction to get to the other spot. This was pretty funny. This was in Ohio, by the way. And I, Yeah, I'm driving down this road. This is how I developed another rule about what size roads I'll be on. I'm driving down this road that has a center line painted, but it doesn't have any side lines. You know, the fog line on the right or on the opposite side. And I came to what I thought was my turn, so I slowed down. I made the turn, and I decided to just stop on the side of the road there because it was a pretty small road to make sure I really was on the road I wanted to be on. And a couple of guys pulled up next to me in a pickup truck, and they were a little scary looking, And they asked me if I was lost, and I said, no, I don't think so. And I told them where I thought I was going, and they said basically, well, you can, but I don't think you really want to go sleep at the end of that road. And ultimately, they pulled off ahead of me, and then I saw them turn off about a half a mile or so down the road. And I went past where they had turned off, down to where I thought I was going to be spending the night. And I'd been driving through bright sunny cornfields. It was now like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe about 5 o'clock, I think. And I'd been driving through bright sunny cornfields. And all of a sudden, the road went into a forest. There was a sign that said road ends 500 feet ahead. And it went sharply downhill into this deep, dark forest that was dank. I mean, it was moist. It was kind of creepy, actually. I didn't even go all the way down the hill. I was able to turn around like shortly after I got into the forest, and all I could think was no, just no. It just did not feel good, and so I continued driving, and I stopped shortly before dark. I mean, I was looking for a possible place along the way where I might be able to tar dock. So I had a backup plan for my first plan. But I didn't have a backup plan for my backup plan, and I really should have. And I kept looking for a place I might have been able to stop, and I couldn't find one. And ultimately, I ended up spending the night in a little town on a street, and actually in a church parking lot. And the church parking lot said parking for the church only, and a phone number to contact with, I don't know, questions or issues or whatever. So I called the phone number, and the recorded message said whatever the name of the church was. And if this is an emergency, you can call Pastor Kathy on her cell phone. And I thought, this is not an emergency. I'm going to just sleep here and hopefully it's all fine. And it was. Now, under circumstances like that, one of the things that I also do is I check these small towns to see if they have their own police department. Because if they don't have your own police department, and I'm parking, not camping, under these circumstances, then the chances are really good you're not going to have a problem. And I also felt really safe being in a church parking lot, and I got out of there pretty early in the morning and everything was fine. All right, so a backup plan for my backup plan would have been really useful there, okay? So I also have a 2-hour rule variation, which is John's instinct is to start looking about 2 hours before stopping time. And that can work really well for somebody. For me, I just want to have a better idea of how far I'm going to be going in that day, where I'm going to wind up for that night. That's what I do. You know, if you're comfortable, checking about 2 hours before you think you're going to stop, that's cool. My target distance for the day depends on what the drive is actually going to be. Am I just driving from one location to another? Am I feeling fine? Do I have plenty of energy for this day? What's the weather like? Do I need to run errands? Do I have to do laundry or get propane or get groceries or any of that kind of stuff? So the more things I need or want to do during the day, like running errands or a quirky stop, the less distance I plan on driving, almost always. So typically for me, and I think John said the same thing, my typical driving day is about 150 miles. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I'll do 250. I don't love it. I feel like all I've done is sit in the driver's seat all day long, and I don't love that. But I want to really reinforce the right mindset here, which is that flexibility beats perfection when it comes to figuring out, how you're going to find your spot, where your spot's going to be. And then one of the other things that I really recommend doing when I'm scouting is checking for a decent cell signal. Not because I can't live without it, but because it's nice to have options if something unexpected comes up. And when I'm doing my route planning, I always zoom in on a satellite view to make sure that the access road looks solid and that I really do look like I'll fit in the place that I'm planning to be. So, a couple of tips there. Now, some of the tools and techniques that I use for finding free overnight parking include iOverlander. And that's my go-to for real-world user updates and filters, and I use the free version. I don't like the free version as much anymore. Um, but I don't want to pay for it either. The free version is clunky in a number of different ways. One of the worst things about it now is that it's really hard to find like town names and stuff like that to make it easier to correlate to my Google Map route that I'm planning to use. So, if I put in a Google Maps route and I've got several days of travel, I'm covering a couple hundred miles, I'll pick where about 150 miles is from where I'm going to start the day, and I'll find a town name near there. Finding that town name on iOverlander is pretty difficult now. The whole zooming in and out on the app is it's hard to do. Here is the best tip that I have found for iOverlander, though. And if you can do this on your phone, more power to you. I can't. I can do it on my computer screen because I need a bigger screen to be able to see this. But if you go to iOverlander.com, you can search the entire country. So let's say that you're in Idaho and you want to be finding a place to camp in Nevada. You can search Nevada even though you're located in Idaho because iOverlander.com doesn't care. If you're in Idaho and you want to search in Nevada on the app, you have to delete whatever you've had downloaded and then download Nevada to be able to search there. That's part of the pain in the neck of the free version of iOverlander. But if you go to iOverlander.com, and some of you can probably do this on your phones, as I said, the screen's too small for me to be able to see it. So you can search wherever you want to. And I find that, and I think this is part of the reason that I typically try and get my stuff lined up the night before, because I usually have my computer out, and then I can just do it. And it's over and done with, and then I can double check iOverlander throughout the day if I need to. So hopefully that little tip saves you some effort and aggravation. Other tools that you can check looking for overnight places to say harvest hosts, scenic or unique stops. I mean, I use harvest hosts periodically. I've been a member for many, many, many years. I'm also a member of RV Overnights, which was started by people that used to work for Harvest Host. It's cheaper, and I don't use either of them all that often, because in both cases, it's not truly free as far as I'm concerned. Now, if I want something like a unique stop, I don't mind paying for it. But if what I want is just a free place to be able to park overnight, that's not free, because you really are expected to support the business that you're visiting. On the other hand, I've been to a bunch of Boondockers welcome sites, which are also part of Harvest Hosts, where they're not looking for any kind of donation or anything if you're just parking there. And those, it took me a while to start using them, but once I did, I've really enjoyed the Boondockers welcome sites that I've used. So, and then the other thing that I've checked, and I mentioned this, is I use Google Maps with satellite view for visibility and access. And I'll flip back and forth between satellite and street view just to make sure I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing, okay? I rarely use the Dyrt. I'm really not a fan of it for free camping. It seems to me it's much more campground oriented, and I don't love the navigation, and I don't want to use a whole bunch of different apps, which brings me to my ChatGPT angle. I'm working on a mini course, and I haven't decided exactly what it's going to be called yet, but it's going to be something like Travel Smarter with ChatGPT. And it shows how I combined what I knew about using apps with AI to plan safe and scenic routes and free overnight stops. And so part of what I've learned how to do, and I'll teach you in this mini course, is how not to have to check all these apps. I'm at the point now where I can just go to ChatGPT, tell them where I'm starting, where I'm going to end up, and it will plot the route for me, including any stops that it thinks I might want to make based on what we have learned, and I'll teach you how to do that. Um, and yeah, I do, because GPT still lies to you. So I do go double check to make sure that it really is taking me where I want to go. But other than that, it's pretty awesome. So stay tuned for this upcoming course. I hope I'm going to have it done before the end of the winter. We'll see how that goes. So, if you're boondocking, especially, so if you're in a campground, you don't really have a choice in how you park very much. But if you're boondocking in open areas, especially out in the desert, check the wind forecast before you park. Sometimes just changing your angle to the wind, put your nose into the wind, makes a big difference between a peaceful night's sleep and a rocking rig. And let me tell you, a rocking rig is really uncomfortable and a little bit scary. And again, where I am right now, I'm out in the desert. I am in an undisclosed location near Borrego Springs, California. And day before yesterday, we had a huge wind advisory with gusts up to 50 miles an hour and steady winds that were averaging 20 to 35. That's a lot of wind, people. And it wasn't supposed to really ramp up until I think about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, 10 o'clock, actually 4:25 in the morning, I woke up because Kit was barking. And I couldn't figure out why he was barking, but then I heard something knocking on the side of the RV. I'm like, what is going on here? And I finally figured out what it was, which is my shade cloth arrangement. Maybe I'll put a picture up here if I can find one. I use suction cups on the top of the slide area and attach a shade cloth to it and then stake it down into the ground. Well, one of the suction cups had come loose in the wind, and it was banging against the side of the RV. So here we are, 4:30 in the morning. I had to put on enough clothes to go outside and shoes and all the stuff and fix that. So I did. And then I woke up again about 6:30 and another one had come off in the wind. And then I just decided to take the whole thing down because I knew it was going to be super windy all day. So about 10 o'clock in the morning, it's a shaggy wind story, guys. Sorry about that. About 10 o'clock in the morning, the wind was picking up. It was getting worse, and it was not anywhere near as bad as it was going to get. I was already rocking. And I'm thinking, I'm not liking this. So I went through the effort of bringing in my slide, coming off of my rocker blocks, because I was blocked up pretty high, moving the angle of the RV so that I was facing into the wind. Now, the way that I had faced initially, when I got to this site, was perfect for maximizing the shade on the passenger side and maximizing the solar exposure on the roof. And now, with the direction that I'm facing, which is why the blind behind me is down, I need to put my shade cloth back up, I'm getting full sun on the driver's side of the rig, like pretty much all day, and then full on the windshield into the evening, because the sun's setting directly out the front now. So I'm not thrilled with that. In fact, I thought this morning about moving it again, and I thought, I'm not going to bother. I think I'll put my shade cloth back up, though. So be weather aware, and wind is a big factor, especially in the desert. So let's be clear about part of how this works for me in terms of my setup. So I'm in a 28-foot Class C. I don't have any towed. That's a towed vehicle, a vehicle that I tow behind me. But I am adding an e-trike. In fact, my e-trike arrived day before yesterday, and I started the assembly yesterday. Hopefully I'm going to get that finished today. And I am so grateful that I've got friends here that I've been able to have a whole bunch of stuff sent to, including my e-trike, because I can't have it delivered to the desert. But John, who started this whole video, thanks again, John, he's got a 30-footer. So that's a similar size, and we have a similar travel rhythm from what he was telling me. I think adding an e-bike or an e-trike is a really good idea. Not everybody wants to do it, and this will be my third e-vehicle. I've had 2 e-bikes previously. One was completely street-oriented, and the other one was very much dirt-oriented. And I ended up getting rid of the second one after I got Kit because he was just so reactive I couldn't use it. And it didn't make good sense to me to keep driving around with it on the back of the rig, and just have it basically wearing out while it wasn't really getting any use. But I decided to go with a trike this time because It's got 3 wheels on the ground, which means that when I'm loading and unloading kit, it's not leaning over. I think he'll find it much more secure. We've been working on getting him into his backpack to be able to travel. Maybe I'll put a picture up here of what that looks like too. Anyway, if you're considering an e-bike, keep in mind that a lot of areas have lanes or sometimes even parallel trails that connect camping areas that you might want to be in to towns. So, for example, in the Quartzsite LTDAs, if you are on the same side of the road as Quartzsite, the town is, the Big Ten area, you can get all the way into town without even having to cross Route 95, Highway 95. If you're on the, La Posa South, that side, you have to cross 95 to get to the other side. But there's, I think it's called the Old Yuma Road, and you can just ride out to the Old Yuma Road, take that right into Quartzsite. So that's pretty cool. And of course, you want to be really conscious of your safety and your positioning, whether or not you've got lighting. Like my new e-trike has turn signals on it as well as headlights and brake lights. And of course, make sure you respect posted signs. Some bike paths do not allow e-bikes. Most do, but not all of them. And let's talk about, what you're going to be looking for when you are out in the desert. We're going to have a whole Quartzsite camping video coming up soon, too. But you want to park with your nose into the wind. We talked about that. Or park to minimize heat intrusion, and oftentimes you can't do both. You might want to consider closing your vents when the gusts pick up, and keep your windows cracked on the opposite side from that the wind's coming from, because that helps to balance pressure. So, a couple of tips there. One of the things that John pointed out to me in the message that he sent me that prompted this video was his own mindset change about really thinking about being able to do this, where before he thought he might not ever consider it. But that's what turns RVing into adventuring. And remember, it's not about where you park. It's about the freedom to move whenever you're ready to. I mean, I love the fact that I live in the same house, but my backyard changes pretty frequently. So there's going to be some videos coming up about assembling and learning curve on the e-trike. And I said we're going to have a Quartzsite camping video coming up. And here's a big one. If you're heading to Quartzsite this winter, keep an eye out. I am planning to have a casual meetup so that we can all get together and share ideas and stories in person. More to come on that. John, thank you again for the thoughtful note and for letting me share it here-ish. I know a lot of folks are going to benefit from the same questions that you had. And if you're just starting out, you're not alone. Every experienced RVer was once sitting in their rig, wondering if they could really do this. Start small, stay curious, and pretty soon you're going to find your rhythm. If you've got your own rule of thumb for finding free overnight parking, share it in the comments, because we learn best when we learn from each other. As always, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you taking your time to watch my videos. And that's all for now. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.